All right, everyone. We got a decent amount of information here to cover today, so I know some people are still filtering in, but we're going to get moving forward with the presentation. Just really excited to be here with you all today. This is the Scaling Education Pathways in Illinois, SEPI. It's our first community of practice for a new collaborative. So, you know, haven't said a Happy New Year to all. Maybe I have in an email, but Happy New Year, everyone. Really excited to gather together here and begin this journey as a community of practice and building and enhancing education pathways in your community. The plan for today, we're going to do some overview of guiding state frameworks. Those of you who are involved in some of our initial requests for proposals conversations and others might be very familiar with a lot of these guiding state frameworks, kind of depending on your level of understanding and familiarity there, but do want to make sure that we just set the context and set the space so that we're all on the same page here. We'll also provide some additional background on SEPI, so what it means to be a part of SEPI, some of the progress that has been made in former collaboratives, and also just some different resources for you all. And then based on the feedback from the forum, thank you to those of you who filled that out, we're going to provide a decent amount of information on different models and resources. As a former educator, I tend to be overzealous in the amount of information being shared. You never want to have like time where you don't know what you're doing. But this presentation, this recording will be sent out to everyone. And I'm actually even going to link in the chat here for you all. Maybe. Just a link to this presentation. So if there are any tech issues on my end or your end, you have the presentation here and available for you all. Well, we're going to start with just some quick introductions. So the EdSystems team here that's going to be working with you all will provide a little background on us, and then we're going to go around the room. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so we can see each other and just give some brief introductions about where you are and where you're coming from. My name is Heather Penzek. I'm a policy and program manager here with Education Systems Center, and I'll let Juan Jose introduce themselves.
Juan Gonzalez, Pathways Director for Education Systems Center. Ginger and John.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ginger Reynolds and Senior Fellow at EdSystems and doing some evaluation of the first round of SEPI collaboratives. Happy to join you and see you all today.
Everyone, I'm John Furr, the Executive Director of Education Systems Center, and really excited to have you all to be part of the next SEPI cohort.
Absolutely. And so Juan Jose and I are generally your main contacts for SEPI, but you may be engaging with Ginger or John in different ways as well. But we are here to support you and work together with you all in this work. Some brief background on us. There's folks on the call who are very familiar with EdSystems and those who are not. But why we're here and what we do, EdSystems, you can see from our mission there, is we're really here to shape and strengthen education and workforce systems. And we're ultimately thinking about those young people and how we're preparing them for productive careers and lives, and what we know and currently is an ever-changing global and local economy. So we work on kind of three main levels here in terms of college and career pathways. So that's a big piece of what we're doing here within SEPI, is focusing in on that education, college and career pathway, and what that means to really have a robust experience as a high school student to deeply understand and know yourself to move forward into a post-secondary plan. But we do a lot of work on the bridges to post-secondary as well. As we all know, it's really important to build those spaces where students transition successfully to a post-secondary plan. So pieces like transitional math and transitional English that really get students at that college-ready level to be set up for success in their post-secondary programs. And then really looking deeply at data and understanding what kind of data needs to be collected, how you use that data, and working closely with communities on how they're thinking through data to serve students in a more equitable and broader access manner. And we do this work at a statewide level, so working closely with agency partners, but our biggest piece here is really working with communities. So you don't really know the work unless you're working deeply with communities and understanding their needs, their innovation. So that's being advocated for and highlighted at the state level. And then strategic projects is actually being renamed. We just had a team retreat to our innovation space. So we're always looking for those spaces for ourselves to be innovative and also support others who are being innovative in these spaces. And so we'd love here to really just have everybody introduce themselves. EdSystems, we bring a lot of information, we bring a lot of expertise, to this space and a lot of resource sharing, but it's really wanting to build a space between you all as that community of practice to be sharing with and learning from one another. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in just a moment so we can see each other as we do introductions, but would love for you all to each share your name, title, organization, and then, you know, a big piece here about education is there's a lot of options. And I'm trying to think how many, we have like 46 people on the line, so I'm not sure. There might be repeats, I might allow it. But be as creative as possible and just really just want to use this space to be thinking about all the different options that there are in the education field as we think about the pathways that we're building. I'm going to do just kind of a popcorn type piece. So as you introduce yourself, maybe just call on the person who's next to you on your video screen, if that works. And does anybody want to kick us off? There's so many faces. This is very exciting.
Heather, if I may suggest, why don't you go ahead and call on people by first name based on your screen? And then if everyone on the call can just be super fast, like no more than 10 seconds when saying your name, title, and the occupation. So I think with 47 people, we need to be super fast. Thank you.
I know this is a little wild. I just want you all to see and know each other. All right, we'll do that. I'll just call on people. So I see Larry first.
Hi, I'm Larry Barn. I'm the principal at Rich Township High School.
And Christine?
Christine Drabeck, counselor at Rich Township High School. A career.
Thank you. Maybe if you want to put your career options in the chat box, how about that?
Okay.
We're being agile here. Oh, I saw you go on mute. Go ahead. Is it Keisha, or how do you say it?
Yes, Keisha Garrett, East St. Louis, School District 189.
Thanks for joining. Yvonne?
Yvonne Elishmawi. I'm clinical faculty at Loyola University, Chicago.
I see Shelley next.
Hi, Shelley Robinson, Southwestern Community High School.
And Linnea.
Hi, Linnea Garrett, assistant principal at Rich Township High School.
Jennifer J.
Hi, Jennifer Johnson, Director of Teacher Preparation and Development at Northern Illinois University.
Caleb.
Caleb Smith, I'm Director of the Masson County Career and Tech Ed System.
Travis.
Travis Corson, Associate Principal over Curriculum Instruction at Urbana High School in Urbana, Illinois.
I see Erica next.
Erica Usgali, I'm the Director of Curriculum and Student Learning in Urbana.
Sydney.
I'm Sydney Kaufman, and I'm with the East St. Louis School District.
I see Jennifer B.
I'm Jennifer Brumback. I'm the Chief Academic Officer in East St. Louis School District 189.
And Lori.
Lori Ellis Piper, Dean of the College of Education at Northern Illinois University.
Andy.
Andy Brendel, teacher and CTE director at Triad High School in Troy, Illinois.
And Donna.
Donna Kaufman.
Donna
Kaufman, Assistant Regional Superintendent, ROE 9 in Champaign.
And Nick C.
Nick Chatterton, I'm the EFE Director in Danville, Illinois.
Brian.
Brian Veit, I'm the CTE Program Coordinator for West Aurora 129.
Nick.
Nick Elder, EFE Director in Champaign.
And I see C. Scott.
Carl Scott, the Associate Principal, Rich Township High School.
Amy.
Amy Martinson, Division Chair for Science, CTE, and Facts at East Aurora High School.
Thank you. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Chrisman. I'm a president and CEO of a community foundation that's in the Aurora area. We serve all of Kendall County and into Southern Kane.
And Lee.
Oh, sorry. It's Lay.
Oh, my apologies.
No, that's okay.
I'm the Director of Financial and Auxiliary Services at Waubonsie Community College.
Geraldine?
Geraldine Hawkins, Business Education Teacher at Civic Memorial High School in Bethalto, Illinois.
Trying to see where I repeat names, so do the last initial. Bob C.
Hi, everyone. Bob Cofield. I'm the Director of School District Partnerships at Waubonsie Community College.
Kay.
I am the Instructional Facilitator in East St. Louis School District 189.
Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Norton, Assistant Superintendent of Student Learning in Urbana.
Joe.
Hi, Joe McGinnis. I'm the Director of the Collinsberry Vocational Center.
And Talia.
Talia Reamer, Director of Placement and Alumni Relations for the Golden Apple Foundation.
Great. Alan.
Alan Mather, President of the Golden Apple Foundation.
Stephen.
Stephen Bournet, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services at Rich Township.
Jessica.
Jessie Day. I'm from Triad High School in Troy, Illinois, and I'm a family and consumer science teacher.
And Sarah Martin didn't introduce themselves before. I see you on there, Sarah.
Hi, Education Systems Center. I'm the External Relations Manager.
Whitney.
Whitney Martino, Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning at West Aurora High School in School District 129.
And I see a Jay Brinkman.
I'm the Assistant Principal for Teaching and Learning at East Aurora High School, District 131.
Great. Bob L.
I'm Bob LaFrance. I'm the Academy Leader for Health, Family, and Consumer Science at Rich Township High School.
And Jeff.
Good afternoon, Jeff Bonomo, Curriculum Director for Rich Township.
You see Janice K.
Hi, I'm Janice Caushall. I'm Dean for Career and Technical Education at Prairie State College.
Oh gosh, everything just moved around here, but Shannon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Flavin, Grants Compliance Manager at Waubonsie Community College in Sugar Grove, Illinois.
Scott.
Scott Peska, Assistant Vice President of Student Services at Waubonsie Community College. Good afternoon.
And Latanya.
Hello, everybody. My name is Latanya Spencer. I'm a school counselor for East St. Louis School District 189.
And then Latanya as well. Sorry. Things keep moving on me here. Yep, go ahead.
Tanya Applewhite, freshman, sophomore, academy leader at the FACS campus at Rich Township High School.
Great, thank you. Janice W.
Janice Wells, the Director of Fine Arts and International Baccalaureate at Rich Township District 227.
Joy.
Joy Sanders, Admissions Manager at Waubonsie Community College.
Mary. Oh, Mary, I think you're on mute. I know, it's just the Zoom thing.
Mary Holly, freshman, sophomore academy leader, Rich Township High School STEM campus.
And Dawn, I believe, has not introduced themselves.
Hi, it's there we go. Hi, it's Dawn Jones and Emily Stilley, Highland, Madison County.
Wonderful. The videos have shifted around on me a bit here. Is there anybody who has not introduced themselves yet? All right, well, since we have our person who does a lot of the communicating for us, Ms. Sarah Clark, we have a request. If everybody could maybe cameras on and a quick smile. We can't really do photos of like the group together anymore, but we can do a really cool screenshot of all our Zoom videos. So again, just really excited to announce all of you coming together for these education pathways. So a quick screen on and a smile. Do you want to count us off, Sarah, since you're taking this, I assume?
I sure can. Ready? Here we go. That one's good. And I know this is painful, but I have to move to the second page because there's so many of you. Okay, I think we're great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you all for doing that. And again, you know, screens on or off, always love to see you, but also understand the bit of that Zoom fatigue that happens. I see you all using the chat box. We are going to be using the chat box quite a bit. So please feel free to continue to use that and give me just a moment here. Oh, I should be sharing my screen again. Maybe did I do this correctly?
You are, but it's in slide presentation mode.
Hold on. Okay. You should be good now.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for your patience with that for a moment. So thank you all again. You can see that we have a lot of different partners here within these collaboratives who are all coming together to build these pathways. And so just excited to engage with you all. Wanted to show just quickly here kind of who's participating in SEPI map-wise. So you heard a lot of different roles and organizations within this space. And we're also coming from all different spaces throughout the state. So you can see kind of in the orange areas where it was our first round of SEPI that I'll show you the names here of those in just a bit that we launched last school year. And then in round 2, you can see in those blue areas where we're starting to engage and really deepen where we haven't been involved in those education pathways here. And so last year, these were our 9 collaboratives. And so I sent along the blog post that kind of gives a quick highlight of each of these collaboratives and what they've done. We'll be sharing some of their learnings and resources as well, but we know that the work that's being done here in this next round will also inform their work. So excited at some point to really bring you all together and have like a super SEPI community of practice. Here today, you heard from all different spaces throughout the state and the different roles and high schools and post-secondary institutions and organizations working closely with education pathways. But here are the 6 collaboratives that are going to be funded through this project. I might need to check my numbers again here, but we've got about 16 school districts, 25 high schools, and 12 colleges and universities that we're representing through our collaborative here in the space. We do have our partners from Golden Apple here, and so this has been sent out to you all, but again, I know there's some new folks joining on the line here, and there's a really exciting announcement. I'm going to turn to Juan Jose in a moment to do a little bit of context setting for the college and career pathway endorsements and what they are. But this is our first really big, exciting piece about what that means when you get a college and career pathway endorsement. And so in education, Golden Apple will advance anyone who earns that or is on track to earn that endorsement to the final stage of their application process. And this means $23,000 in tuition assistance. There's also all kinds of other opportunities that Golden Apple provides, such as summer professional development. And so provided here for you all that announcement and a fact sheet for students as well. And I don't know, Juan Jose or wants to say anything about that, or our Golden Apple friends on the line as well.
I would chime in first that, you know, normally when you developed your pathway plan or proposal to us, you were probably in sync or in collaboration with a local college or university. But the goal with this Golden Apple Foundation is any student who has a college and career pathway endorsement for education would have a statewide currency associated with that endorsement. So they not only would have opportunities with your local college or university partner, but now also like in more broadly with other university and colleges throughout the state.
And thanks so much. I think I just might add that, you know, 80% of those who become Golden Apple scholars and agree to teach in schools of need end up teaching within 17 miles of where they grew up. So this is a great way to kind of build the pipeline from your community to have students go back to your community and fulfill their commitment to teaching for 5 years or more.
Thank you all. I'm going to turn it over to Juan Jose here just to do, again, kind of a brief overview of the college and career pathway endorsement. And so there is a kind of overzealous, lots of information here, but we are going to have pauses and stops for questions and discussions. But please feel free to be marking any questions or comments in the chat box as well as we go.
Thank you, Heather. So, the biggest, most important piece of context that you all need to know is that there was a law passed in 2016 called the Postsecondary Workforce Readiness Act. This law has 4 components around kind of career expectations, transitional courses, competency-based education, but most importantly, it has a very robust language around college and career pathway endorsements that are eligible for students to earn on their high school diploma. Next slide. Education system has been very kind of intentional about implementing the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act. And we've developed this kind of like model or this framework that you see on your screen, which is by what we consider to be a properly created pathway, whether it be in CTE or non-CTE program. Essentially, we always believe that a pathway should have some individualized planning by a student and kind of their mentors or your colleagues at the school level. There should be career-focused instruction, which may mean CTE coursework, but is actually also inclusive of non-CTE coursework that can be considered CTE coursework. My classic example of this is many districts offer AP Computer Science, but that's not labeled CTE. But any reasonable person would argue that AP Computer Science is career-focused coursework for someone in IT or business, right? More importantly, we really care about a work-based learning component to a pathway. And we also make sure that all of you, as you're building your pathways, that you pay attention to certain core academic subject areas, such as science or social science, and how those courses complement or augment the courses being taken by a student in the career focus section. And as you see here, a student should progress, right, from the secondary space through the post-secondary. A pathway has that kind of link, and it should be a seamless transition from secondary to post-secondary. You're earning credentials, you're earning degrees. And then with the Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act, there's this college and career pathway endorsement, which is created that a student could earn on their high school diploma. I liken it to 2 things. I liken it to the state seal of biliteracy that a student can earn on their high school diploma, or similar to maybe like in post-secondary space, it'd be like a college major or minor, right? Like something that they've accomplished over multiple years of instruction and kind of earned through and displayed competency. Next slide.
I'm just gonna do a quick check. I got a comment. Can everyone hear Juan Jose okay? I can hear you fine on my end, but just checking.
Thank you. Next slide, Heather, if you can. Thank you. So just wanted to reiterate, kind of next slide again, that this can be earned into diploma, and it will be, the state has developed a state seal and a sticker that would go on that diploma and transcript. This slide here is a little overwhelming. Don't get too down if you can't read it all or see it all. But these are essentially the component parts of what is required to earn the college and career pathway endorsement, broken down by those 4 subject areas that we kind of advocate for. Some of the things that I will highlight is that in professional learning, otherwise known as work-based learning, there's very clear definitions of number of activities and how many hours of activities in certain work-based learning activities you must complete to earn the endorsement. And I think one of the things that we care a lot about in the career-focused instructional sequence, what differentiates the college and career pathway is that not only must you take 2 or more years of courses in the career focus sequence, some of those courses must be for early college credit, dual credit, AP, IB, articulated credit, so on and so forth. And lastly, we also care a lot about in the state cares a lot about the academic readiness of students. Students must graduate high school placing into college level math and English, and the endorsement kind of will require that as a component part as well. Individual plan is a requirement of the endorsement, but that is such a low lift. Many of you, by implementing college and career expectations or the college and career readiness indicator or the PACE framework, are doing that pretty universally in your school districts. So that's not something that's a big lift or a shift in kind of your existing practices. Thank you, Heather. Next one.
And so just wanted to pause there for a moment, and I linked the presentation in again for you all if you want to take a closer look at that endorsement slide. But if there's anything in the chat or you want to share out loud briefly here to take a pause, we stop kind of talking at you. And thinking about that framework, are there areas that you feel really strongly about that you're implementing successfully already? And if you have any details about best practices or models with that you'd like to share, and if there's any questions that you have generally about that framework as well, we would love to pause and take a moment for that before we dive into education pathway specific background. And again, feel free to share out loud and mute yourselves or in the chat box as well. And I can kind of go back to that slide even maybe for you to take a look at. So things that you might be doing well and sharing some details about that or questions that you all have here. And thinking specifically of the education pathway.
Heather, this is Bob Cofield. Is there a standard format or a document already created to assist with the individual plan that school districts can use, or is that something that they would build on their own to keep in a student file?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to the point earlier from Juan Jose, there's a lot of different ways that this is being done. It's really just that you're having an explicit conversation and working closely one-on-one with that student. I'm sure, I don't know if anyone on the line kind of has templates or models that they use for individualized plans, but I see that kind of vary from space to space. And there might be like graduation requirements that are outlined there.
Yeah, and I think we also oftentimes see those being used as part of systems like Naviance or Zello or other more homegrown options as well, where they're kind of part of the overall college and career planning processes for students.
There's a question from Shelley in the chat about does the college credit have to be in the educational pathway or can it be English, for example? So I will kind of, this is a common question, so I'll kind of address it as best. Actually, I'm going to give you the answer that we've worked with and collaborated with the state and a lot of our partners. So yes, the dual credit or early college credit has to be in the career focused courses. Now, one could argue that English, to be a teacher, you need to pass and accomplish college level English, right? But the problem is college level English should be accessed by all students, right? English 101 or English composition is a requirement of almost every associate of applied science degree and a requirement for almost nearly every bachelor's degree. So that is not unique to the education profession. It is a universally required kind of college course. So when we talk about career focused courses, we're talking about courses that are unique to that profession. So yes, you're going to look for courses that are dual credited with like college dual credit courses in education, but there's also certain unique courses outside of the Department of Education, the education department, that are unique to teaching. For example, our research has shown, and Heather will show this later, that many bachelor's degrees or associate's degrees in education related fields require, for example, psychology as a requirement to kind of earn that degree. That would normally fall under a social science category, but that could be feasibly and reasonably considered as career focused as well. So, whenever you're thinking about, is this course career focused or unique to this major, is it only a peer or does it predominate many colleges and universities like requirements for graduation for this degree, or is it just universally required?
If you have other questions or thoughts, please feel free to write those in the chat, but just going to keep moving us forward here. So it's kind of where I thought that conversation was leading to as well, is thinking through, like in this space, we are focused on the human and public services endorsement area and education as a part of that. But there are other areas where students can get endorsements in. And so another really great benefit of participating in this kind of collaborative and community is building that muscle to implement an endorsement in the education pathway. We've seen that inspire a lot of communities to then think through what that could look like for these other areas as well. So this process that you'll go through with your education pathway will be a model for those others that you might want to implement in your state. And so we're going to provide here again some additional state frameworks and resources. We'll talk about these in a few different ways, but there are recommended competencies that are aligned with the endorsement areas and through the PWR Act. And so on the left is just a snapshot here of some of the essential employability competencies. So again, skills you need to be ready in all facets of life. And these documents, these resources are all linked at the end. There's a resources page for you all. But also for education, there are defined competencies for human and public services for education, and they're defined into the 4 categories from the Danielson framework. These competencies were developed through intensive multiple engagements with diverse stakeholders. So you had secondary, post-secondary institutions, community-based organizations, industry partners were all involved in creating these. So these can be a great guide and resource for you as you're designing courses or experiences for students in the pathway.
If I may add, Heather, regarding the competencies are made with a high school student in mind, meaning that at the graduation of high school and having earned the endorsement, the student will display these competencies and therefore be eligible to enter a post-secondary program in that endorsement area or entry-level work in that endorsement area.
Thanks, Juan Jose. Recently, we also developed model programs of study guides, and I see some of my fellow committee members on here today. Hi again. And we did this for education, and there really is kind of a backward mapping process here. We have a webinar recording of this, and would love to answer any questions you have about the process. But ultimately, what we created, and we did this for 4 different spaces and are embarking on 4 new spaces right now. But we created a guide for education. So what does a model program of study look like in the education pathway? And this is probably very small on your screen. This resource is linked at the end as well. And I'm just gonna kind of show a snapshot of each area of this guide. But really thinking through, again, for these different spaces, how are we outlining in a very clear and kind of visually appealing way, shout out again to Sarah if she's still on the line, what it looks like for a student to pursue that pathway from the beginning of it all the way to and through a post-secondary program. And what we see a lot in the education space is kind of needing to ultimately get to that bachelor's professional educator license. So in the first part of the diagram, we really look at that career-focused coursework. And so again, these are the recommended, this is the model program of study. You might be doing different courses within your space, but outlining here really where that robust kind of model would be for a student pursuing education. There's 2 courses here that I will call out, Intro to Education and Diversity in Education. These were 2 courses that we also defined competencies for through the committee process. So you can look at those in the guide as well, and we'll discuss those in other communities of practice and through this conversation. But you can also see we've got some pieces here about ECE credentials and thinking about students who might be specifically on that early childhood education trajectory. But as you can think through kind of some of those initial comments in the chat box, there are so many career options in education. And so it's definitely a push and an encouragement to be really thinking through how we're exposing students in our space to the variety of opportunities and how they get there. That's something very much called out within the Intro to Education course and how students are exposed to that and develop an awareness and understanding of those paths. We also outlined the different post-secondary options. So whether you're going through a route in early childhood or going into the guided transfer for K-12 teaching. With education, it's decently straightforward with the caveat that there is still work to be done in the AAS space for early childhood education and how those more easily transfer credits to pursue a master's. And then we highlight some different occupations, wages, and job growth in the education pathway. Again, this format is similarly done for the 3 other published areas in health sciences, manufacturing, and IT. And we're pursuing 4 other areas in arts and communication. I'm like, my brain's still warming up here. Agriculture, food, and natural resources, architecture, construction, and energy, and finance and business. So those will be upcoming and available for public comment as well, if those are spaces that you're interested in providing that on. So we'd love to just hear, looking at something like the model program of study, how you think a resource like this might be utilized within your community, or again, any questions that you might have about it.
Maybe if we can go back a couple screens, Heather, so folks can see it. Just remember, folks, that the model program of study envisions a pathway or a program that is secondary through post-secondary and makes recommendations around dual credit and work-based learning in the core and in the auxiliary kind of the general education sequence and the career focus sequences as well.
And you said this would be linked for us to have access to?
It is, yeah. I can put the presentation link in again here for you all. And I don't know if someone else wants to link in the model program study directly, but at the end, there's a resource slide and that's linked in there.
Moreover, not only is there this visual link, but like an entire 20-page document explaining every decision of it is also there. Yep. So feel free to enjoy that reading at night.
I have a question.
And again, go ahead.
This, the next slide, it's the same slide, but it's just bigger. Can you go to the next slide, please? So in column 2, where it says Intro to Education, Education Methodologies, are you saying that the students should take the Intro to Education, the education methodologies, and they have to take those two, and then or human growth and development and child development courses?
Yeah, so the Intro to Education course, that's a dual credit course. It's not an IAI course, so the Illinois Articulation Initiative. So that's one that we've defined competencies for, but doesn't articulate to all Illinois institutions. So recommending that as kind of like a starter dual credit course. The educational methodology is aligned with the ISB, the CTE matrix, and those courses for the education pathway. And then these are one or the other. So human growth and development, again, within that CTE matrix, or if there is a potential, and again, this is 10 through 12, so not thinking about just one grade level doing that. If there were a potential for a student to take the dual credit version, they could take one or the other, depending on their readiness.
Thank you. Me and a colleague, we were discussing it, and we just wanted to make sure we had some type of clarity when we roll out our education curriculum or pathway.
Heather, there's a question about the competencies for intro ed and diversity ed, how kind of those competencies maybe are measured. If you can comment on that.
I can talk about how they're kind of developed and then measured in terms of like assessed within the classroom, I assume that question is going for. So the development of them, we looked at, so the reasons, first of all, the Intro to Education and Diversity in Education were even identified, is we looked at community colleges all across the state of Illinois and some of the common courses that they were offering in their program for education. And we saw Intro to Education and Diversity in Education popping up quite a bit. And so we looked at the different syllabi from those courses and those learning outcomes and really identified and aligned those with even some of the technical competencies that I showed earlier to create a list of competencies for each course. So they're all informed by work that's currently being done with some adjustments made to them as well. In terms of measuring these, I can see them resulting in or being measured in different formats, whether it's a formal assessment, but also really thinking through what some kind of work-based learning components could be of that, whether they're doing some observations, getting career exploration with guest speakers and panels and engagement there, or even potentially completing an internship kind of connected to that course. I don't know if there's other ideas. I know I see like Jesse on the line here as well was part of the committee to speak to that. I'm answering that question.
I'll respond to Caleb. Caleb, yes, there are like this. Would you consider as this template as kind of like a guide, and then you are always welcome to adjust based on the local course offerings of your community college or your university partner. That is definitely welcome. What we try to do is synthesize what is typically happening in colleges and universities throughout the state and kind of made recommendations based on that. But of course, every local high school district has their own set of CTE offerings, and their own community college has their own set of dual credit course offerings. So you're obviously welcome to kind of do that essentially. But what we're always trying to show though is that essentially our recommendation is that students should start with some sort of introduction to the industry and to the profession, and they should kind of increase in skill as they take more courses and culminate with some sort of capstone experience that really rounds out their experience. There's a question about kind of like, what if a student changes mind about an industry or endorsement? So for that, I'll turn it over to John Furr.
Yeah, so I think that's absolutely part of the idea behind Pathways is that students will be provided the opportunities to explore different career areas, and students may very well choose to start in one pathway and move to other pathways as part of their high school experience. We often say that college is a very expensive career exploration tool. So if students are figuring out kind of what they want to explore in college and what major they want to pursue, it's much better to be able to work that through in high school. So typically in pathway design, you see kind of opportunities for orientation to all careers that can happen in 8th or 9th grade, then giving students those broader orientation courses to a particular sector area that they might get then in 9th and 10th, and then getting into more specific coursework as they're progressing. So I think there's also the opportunity with the College of Career Pathway endorsement for students to earn what's called a multidisciplinary endorsement. And those are for students who might start in one career area like the education space, decide they want to switch to information technology later on. If they're still meeting the requirements across those two pathway areas, they can earn that multidisciplinary endorsement on their diploma as well.
And that was a big component in the committee conversations, was this intro to education course, and really starting early on, tackling kind of some of those maybe misconceptions or perspectives that students have about what it means to be a teacher and the different routes that you can take as an educator, and really starting those conversations early so that students aren't getting to senior year and all of a sudden being like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was. And then having to make a quick decision about what else they might want to do after senior year. I also just wanted to point out, I see the chat box kind of flashing here and take a look, but in this post-secondary space, so that space about customizing, this is definitely a space where maybe you can call out certain programs or institutions within your community, and even in the career-focused coursework as well. That kind of deters from what we have here as a model program of study, kind of thinking through what that looks like for you all as a communication piece. I'm going to keep this kind of moving here just to get into some other brief background on SEPI and move into some models and resources for you all as you are thinking about your education pathways. But again, please feel free to put those questions and comments in the chat box. And so the initial origins of SEPI, there are, of course, a lot of people involved and concerned about the teacher shortage that is happening in Illinois and in states all across the country, but really wanted to make sure that we're building education pathway systems that begin in high school and continue all the way through to the initial teacher placement. So we're supporting a student in high school, in post-secondary, and then coming back and having that experience even within our own space. The State Board of Education in Illinois has also expanded on the pilot and is funding these enhanced CTE education programs, very much modeled and in collaboration with what we're doing here through SEPI. And so as you all might know and kind of becoming aware of within your own collaboratives, these are the partners that are represented within each collaborative. So a school district or a collaboration of school districts that includes at least 2 high schools, one community college or 4-year institution that is offering the dual credit for the program, and then also one accredited teacher preparation program where students are likely to continue. Students may go on to other programs, right? I mean, everybody is empowered as a human, hopefully, to make their own choices, but really having a program that's in line with your pathway, that you have an option for students should they want to continue on that path after high school. Beyond just the college and career pathway endorsement that we talked about, is again thinking about how students are being transitioned to a post-secondary institution that has that college education, but then really those providing that placement and initial career supports for students. So whether you're offering them a student teaching experience within your own space, even sometimes we see collaboratives offering opportunities in the summer for students to gain additional work experience and really engage deeply. As we all know, you don't know what it means to be a teacher until you're in that room interacting with students and having to manage a classroom on your own. And then also just really promoting the educator profession, and then how you're also using strategies to ensure equity and data. Again, thinking about teacher shortage and the pipeline of teachers, making sure that we do have a diverse pipeline of teachers that represents our community. And so there's a few different required activities, kind of spoke to some of these, but thinking about how you're incorporating those technical and essential employability competencies. If you're also thinking through an intro to education or diversity in education course, those competencies that have been outlined in the model programs of study. Also through ISB, there is a web-based template where you would submit that you have all the pieces of the college and career pathway endorsement so that your space has been recognized as being able to offer those endorsements to students. I don't know if Juan Jose, you unmute if you want to say something there.
Yes, just so everyone's aware, you all have to submit 5,000,001 things to ISB on a frequent basis. And unfortunately, when the college and career pathway endorsement was created, there was no existing platform or tool for someone to submit their pathway plan or template, right? So Education Systems, partnering with Southern Illinois University's Workforce Center, kind of created an online platform where you would just list out all the courses that you're going to offer in the pathway, all the work-based learning experiences. It's not student level data, it's just district level data, right? So it's just kind of like an uploading of what you're offering that a student would have access to meet the requirements of the endorsement. ISB would then look at your kind of uploaded information and confirm, yes, they're offering sufficient, information so a student would be able to meet the requirements in the endorsement, and therefore we authorize this district to track which students have met the endorsement and have earned it. So just keep in mind that the endorsement kind of process is a two-step process. First, you as a district get authorized by ISB to offer it. And then once you're authorized, then you have your internal procedures to track which students have completed all the component parts, and you place that on their diploma. As a part of this grant, you're now required to develop that in the next school year. We've given you to, I think, the class of 2023, if I'm not mistaken, Heather. But for our previous cohorts, we are pushing them to move forward this academic year with kind of authorization by ISB.
Thanks, Juan Jose. And then also the piece here too that I spoke to earlier, really thinking through how are you all recruiting students into the education pathway. As we've spoken to, it really starts early on in that 9th and 10th grade, how students are thinking about what it is that they want to do and being exposed to those opportunities. So really ensuring that all students, especially thinking about those who are from underrepresented populations, have limited social capital, how do we connect them early on with their options and also connect them with professionals in the education field so that they really start gaining a tangible understanding of what it means to pursue that path as an educator. We're going to kind of go into some specifics here on just different models and resources. I know there were questions about, what dual credit courses are there, what work-based learning are folks doing in education, but just pausing there for a moment if there's any questions generally about SEPI and being a part of the collaborative. There's a question from Caleb about completed examples of the web-based template.
Yeah, absolutely, Caleb. I have some kind of PDF downloaded examples, and we have some online examples that I've saved. Our online platform is being transitioned fully to ISB, but I did kind of archive some of the best examples in the past and have some additional spreadsheets that we can share that will help move folks along this path. Just always keep in mind, we're always here to support you in that process.
Absolutely, we can put those together. We even have kind of, as part of our former collaborative, they put together kind of different diagrams and templates of what they're doing in their pathway. So we can put those all together and send them out to you all. I have a couple examples here today, but we can send more of those. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to turn it to Ginger here for a moment. So again, our first round of SEPI collaborators last year are by no means done with us. We are still continuing to engage with those collaboratives in all of our spaces. And a big piece that we're doing is actually really talking explicitly to them about their experience developing education pathways and what some of their learnings have been from that. So I'll turn it to Ginger to provide a little more context and summary of that so far.
Exactly. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, we are spending this year talking to the collaboratives, the existing collaboratives, and some specific schools. We really want to help. We want to understand what has been working, what hasn't been working. We want to understand what their pathways actually look like, from depending on what they started thinking they were going to look like and how they actually ended up looking. And we hope to be able to share that learning with you. Here's some early learnings that we've heard. Some general suggestions are that it's important to get your counselors on board to help with recruitment. It's been helpful, especially in COVID, to use social media for marketing and for community engagement. And it's been helpful for the parents to understand the processes and goals, because this is fairly new for many parents. Some suggestions for making the pathway equitable are to eliminate or reduce the cost of dual credit courses. That can be a barrier. Also help with transportation, and to embed some opportunities in the regular courses for students who work and aren't able to do that kind of, have those opportunities outside of school hours. Some COVID silver linings actually are that virtually observing some classes, which most have been forced to do, eliminates travel, and that's been really helpful in some cases. And then I've heard some people talking about how Zoom allows students to pop into classes to observe or teach, and then pop right out with their their high school instructor and debrief with their peers right away. And that's been a really useful COVID silver lining and something people are thinking about how to continue to be able to implement. So that's just sort of a look at what we're starting to learn, but we will for sure keep all of you in the loop as we learn more about what's working and what isn't working. So thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Ginger. And to the point made earlier, we can definitely and will definitely make the resources available that the first cohort has been working through, and also kind of just create a folder for our cohort as well, if there's anything that we want to upload in there and share with others as we're developing and enhancing our own education pathways in this space. And so I'll show you just a couple of examples of some former collaboratives and what their education pathway look like. Here is District 214. This is actually a bit of an older map. I think a lot of the same similar pieces are here, but I have linked a bit further on. They just recently redid their academic handbook, and they're always a great model for how you're communicating and marketing this to parents and families about what this looks like in a explicit, but also straightforward, but simple manner. Juan Jose, I didn't know if you wanted to, I saw you on mute for a second, okay. But it really shows again what they're doing starting from that freshman year, and even what this looks like for them as options for post-high school. So in 214, their partner was National Louis University that they were working with in their collaborative. We also have kind of example here, and this is a template again that collaboratives submitted this last time in the spring for their community of practice, and so we'll share these with you all. But here's an example from Cobden High School down in Southern Illinois, and some of their career-related coursework and work-based learning experiences that they're doing. You can see a lot in here. I think a really valuable piece in Cobden is they have a strong relationship with Southern Illinois University, and they support a lot of the work-based learning experiences and courses that students are completing as a part of the pathway. But just to kind of show you what this looks like here.
If I can pause for a moment, if we can go back one, Heather. I just wanted to point out, you see the, not to Cobden, I think. If we can go to Cobden slide, sorry. I just wanted to point out kind of their unique feature of psychology as a dual credit course, as an 11th grade course, and then building to more kind of education department courses. This is the example I was mentioning earlier, that there are certain EDU type courses that dual credit that are natural fits, but there's some courses that are like reasonably and appropriately considered career-focused courses that they have included in their pathway to meet the minimum threshold requirements of the 6 hours of early college credit that are required of the endorsement. So, you know, you should kind of be willing to work with us to talk about which courses make sense. But this is that example of like that example where they had limited access to dual credit, and they had a unique solution that they kind of included as a part of their pathway to fulfill the requirements of the endorsement.
And Amanda has a question there in the chat. I don't know if others can respond to, but I do know that in 214, they've thought about that as part of their child growth and development course.
I would
also, we also want to respond to that.
Yeah, I also, from my understanding, a lot of the high school districts who had a program in early childhood education were mostly aligning with the community college programs and coursework, which by extension may also be aligned to INCRA's kind of gateways credentials. We also in our model program of study kind of recognize and attempted to align as best we can to those credentials and gateway opportunities. Just keep in mind that, you know, some of those credentials have an endpoint, and some of those have the actual opportunity to build up towards kind of a professional educator license. And we always definitely look at ways that you can align to build up towards a professional educator license and those more living wage opportunities.
Yeah, and those credential competencies as well were thought about when we were doing our intro to education course and diversity in education course, kind of embedding those throughout there. But again, wanting to create courses that weren't specific towards early childhood, but were accessible for students pursuing any path along the education pathway. Also, in terms of just the virtual space, this is a very much just like first draft and thought here, and would love to hear if there's anything else. I know Ginger kind of spoke to the example of having students pop in and out on Zoom to observe and teach classes, but just thinking through, and I'm going to go through these definitions explicitly here in just a moment. But again, building on that continuum from career awareness when they first start being exposed to the education pathway, all the way through to the end where they're doing a career development experience, which is more of an internship type experience. And again, I'm going to show these definitions in just a moment, but want to highlight here for you all. I know this is the word unprecedented. I'm sure we're all tired of hearing it, right? But just the piece here of thinking through how we've had to shift virtually and how we can keep some of those pieces as we move forward that have really served to be valuable for students as they engage in work-based learning. And again, just kind of showing some different resources and examples here, some of the common dual credit courses that we see. But again, to Juan Jose's point, if there's others that you're thinking about, would love to have that discussion here or one-on-one. But very much that psychology course, educational psychology is a required course pretty much, I think, in any program. And so using psychology and gaining that credit early on in the high school space so that they can meet the prereq and move right into that, potentially their first year in a post-secondary program. We'd love to hear too, just from the group here to, take a space from me talking to you and Juan Jose about if there's any other early college credit education related coursework that you currently offer, or even thinking about some of your other career related coursework. If there's courses you're close to implementing but might be struggling to implement and you have questions about, would love to create some space for that here. And again, any best practices or ways if you did struggle with a course, but now you're implementing it, what that looked like to get to that space would be helpful too.
I do have a question regarding that. It's as far as ICCB's policy of no, mixed classes where all students in a dual credit class have to be able to be eligible to be pretty much dual enrolled. So with the intention, our school's intention, ISB's and your intention of getting all students having access to this program, but then if we do it as a dual credit class, our community college saying that only certain students can take it, what are your thoughts on that? Have other schools ran into that issue, or will that become an issue in trying to implement the endorsement model?
I know John wanted to. Go.
Sure. Yeah, Kelly, I know that is an issue which comes up. I mean, one question is kind of working with their community college partner about the prerequisite that's in place and seeing whether there might be some solutions for that particular dual credit course. Do they really need to have an English placement requirement or a reading placement requirement for it? Could that potentially be waived as part of the process? Or might there be ways if students might say be also enrolled in a transitional English course, for example, at the same time, to allow students to be able to have access to their coursework at the same time they're taking the dual credit course. So those are a lot of conversations that have to happen as part of the partnership. That I think that obviously those placement requirements provide barriers to all students. That's kind of a good place to start to see if you can be able to get around it in that cohort. If not, you also see some efforts for kind of some structured scheduling around some courses that might be more articulated in nature as opposed to dual credit, but we definitely would view articulated credit as a less attractive option than dual credit.
And this space, this community of practice, is a good one for that as well, to understand like the differing prereqs. So if you're trying to do a course and other spaces are saying like, we don't have the same prereqs, it starts to create some understanding and awareness for you about where this is possible to enroll students in certain dual credit coursework in other areas where it might not be in yours, and kind of spark those conversations with your partners. But if there's any too, would love if that needs to be kind of like a one-on-one conversation. We're always willing to engage with you on that as you think through approaching that conversation and looking at what else is out there in the field. I don't know if Bob, you want to talk to that at all, what you have in the chat here?
Well, I was just responding to the item on the slide about describing any early college credit coursework in place. And we're fortunate at Waubonsee that we, over the last probably 3 to 4 years, have started to offer more dual credit, specifically in our Intro to Ed class. And we have a growing number of local school districts that are interested in pulling that into their district for dual credit purposes. And thankfully, the relationship we have with Northern Illinois University allows that class, as well as all of the others in our EDU sequence, to articulate directly into their program. So, that's a product of having very, thoughtful high school administrators who are intent on growing their education students, as well as on the other end, having a 4-year partner with NIU who recognizes that there is a really great opportunity here for us to build that pipeline from high school to post-secondary.
Great, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move us a bit here then into kind of the work-based learning space. And so again, as educators, I'm sure many of us here know, to really understand what that means, you need to be engaged deeply in it. And so that's what work-based learning does for the education pathway, but really any pathway. No pathway is complete if students are just taking career-related coursework and not actually engaging deeply in that industry area. So you can see here where the continuum grows from that career awareness state all the way to a potential pre-apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, or even full apprenticeship. And you see that there's that increasing intensity of employer engagement along the way. Something kind of nice, not always super easy, but you have a lot of folks in your collaborative who can serve as those employer partners and those industry mentors as you engage students in these work-based learning experiences, whether it's through your feeder districts or through some of your post-secondary partners, really engaging students in that space. And so I'm going to review the definitions of each of these components, the career exploration through the career development experience, but these are also all within the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. These are state-defined definitions, and they were again developed through that stakeholder process where we had multiple different spaces coming together to determine these. And that's linked there at the end here. But thinking through each of these, so within career exploration, this is the beginning of that continuum. Awareness, again, it has to do a lot with kind of that individualized planning. That's a very, very like soft exposure to education. Maybe students are watching some videos, taking some surveys, right? Career exploration is really when they get to a point where they're engaging directly with those employers and they're learning about, you know, the sector, the different occupations within the sector. And a big piece here with career exploration is the student should no longer be a passive recipient. They should be engaged in a live conversation with that employer and able to ask questions and have that person respond. What we see a lot, and I see a lot of recommendations for this, is kind of doing panels to again show the different occupations that you can have within education, kind of in the early stages, and as students kind of realize more what it is that they want to do, engaging them with someone closely related to the pathway in education that they want to pursue. And so within the endorsement, you would be doing 2 of these career exploration activities. For the team-based challenge, this is really where you're thinking a lot about your project-based learning. So it's a group problem-based learning project. It's related to the education field. And it's a real problem that we're dealing with right now. So I mean, virtual remote learning, addressing the gap that's going to result from some students not having the resources to learn virtually. There's a lot in this current moment that students could be tackling and coming up with solutions or ideas to support. But there is really the big piece here is having mentoring from adults with expertise. So again, these could be one of your other school partners. Faculty from post-secondary institutions are always great mentors for this type of experience. Even I know we've had some conversations thinking through some grad students or undergraduate students and where they might fit in to mentor high school students and also gain some of their own experience as they pursue a path as educators. And you would be doing 2 of these team-based challenges. What we see kind of as the most successful piece with these is if they're embedded within a course. So these might be being completed through some extracurricular organizations, student organizations, but really embedding them within a course helps make that connection between the content of the course and then the actual industry area of education. And then a career development experience is, you know, for other terms that you might see for this is like an internship, cooperative education program, but it's that supervised work experience. So a lot of times in education, I think about this as like a mini student teaching. So students are really in authentic working conditions. So they might be going to the actual school itself and engaging as a teacher in that space, or kind of to the example earlier, you know, maybe they are going in by Zoom and they're teaching lessons by Zoom kind of based on your context and your community. But there should be a co-development piece here. So the high school and then one employer in the field is collaborating on that. There is some form of compensation or educational credit to the participant, and I'm going to show you some examples of how different spaces are thinking about this. It's bringing in those skills from the essential employability, the technical skills, and that there's some form of professional skills assessment. And there's no required professional skills assessment. This is really thinking through within each of your spaces, assessing those skills and assessing that learning and understanding that the student had throughout that experience. And that you have a minimum of 60 total hours. And so we see some spaces doing micro internships where they'll do kind of 2 30-hour career development experiences, or, you know, over a full semester completing those 60 hours. I see some items in the chat, also just posing this question here for you all. Go ahead, Juan Jose.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Amanda's question. For the career development experience, is it required that students have seat time with a teacher and then time at a placement, or could the experience be the internship?
Yeah, so there's no requirement for it to be connected with a course. I think if that is the question there, right? It could occur outside of a course, but they should be engaging directly with a teacher or other education professional to complete that experience. And I can go back here even before I move this question, if there's other questions about the definitions here.
Yeah, and I think it has to model like a real life for career development. It has to model a real world experience or real world like job placement, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it from my own student teaching experience, right? Like before I did my student teaching, I kind of had those observational hours, but I was still, again, kind of passive. I was in the classroom and I would help kind of pass out some papers, maybe do something here and there inside that space. But I wasn't really the one leading anything. So here's where, again, you have a student in that career development experience, like they are engaging in that. And they are actually performing that work because, again, it's really important to understand what it means to be an educator, what it looks like, how it feels like to a student, how they feel about themselves doing that, to know that this is what they want to pursue in post-secondary. I tell the story frequently about how I took a AP Bio class senior year. I loved it. So I went and majored in biology, and then I interned at the Shedd Aquarium and realized I actually don't like working with fish, and I actually care more about teaching. And then I went on to get certified to be a teacher. And I think that process could have started a lot sooner or been problematized a lot sooner if I'd actually engaged in something that I was interested in high school. So again, really having that reflective experience for students. Would love to just kind of pose a question here again to you all. And again, feel free to unmute and share out loud or within the chat. But as you're looking at those definitions and thinking about some of the work-based learning experiences that you have in your own space, what those are, if you want to share those with the group. And then kind of similar question to before, are there certain experiences that you're close to implementing, you're struggling to implement, and you have questions about? And I can go back to these definitions too as a reference.
Thank you for sharing, Amanda, about that preschool that your school runs. As a quick question, do the students get paid an hourly rate for that experience, or do they get credit hour compensation?
They get credit hour compensation. And for, at least at Urbana High School, they're the ones who do the lesson planning and run the activities.
Sounds exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a great model too, again, for students who, I know there aren't always there is a high school lab within a high school, right? A student could teach a high school class. But again, thinking about how are they engaging with the grade level that they would like to teach is so important. Maybe to spark some thinking too, because I do want to leave a little bit of time for you all to get in some breakout rooms, even for just 5 minutes to chat with one another. So thinking about some different examples in education and collected these through the own things that I've heard or have participated in, but also from our former collaboratives and what they're doing, and even looking at some of the information that you all submitted. So you can see in a career exploration, there's all kinds of different pieces where you might be going to a fair, doing some interviews, guest speaker panels, even a classroom observation, right, where a student could just observe the classroom and maybe ask some questions of that teacher or students afterwards. We also heard some really fun ideas about some spaces wanting to put on their own kind of future educator conferences and having some different speakers and breakout sessions. You could turn that into something more robust, even within there, like a team-based challenge if you wanted to. But even thinking through, I mean, this virtual space has opened up an opportunity for students to attend conferences that you might even attend. If they attend maybe one breakout session here or there, hear from a speaker at that conference. I think more and more what we're seeing is that these conferences are being offered at no cost, which is really exciting and something that's valuable to engage students in. We also see, and I kind of mentioned this here with team-based challenges, where you might be using other organizations like Educators Rising. We see a lot of spaces using their curriculum, using their model for competition to engage in those team-based challenges. But really, we see a lot of those post-secondary institution partnerships, even if they have student organizations where they have some future educators, people pursuing a career in education to be mentors and work directly with students. But there's a few project ideas put in here that we've seen, like preparing for parent-teacher conferences. How are you going to have maybe a difficult conversation or address a new piece with those parents or guardians or families of that student? Or even, you know, implementing an activity with an education component, but having them think really outside the box of that, right? And thinking about that for a specific grade level, or maybe even community events to bring everyone together. In career development experiences, maybe similar to kind of the preschool lab space, where there might be a lab hour directly after that course, or maybe even before it, right? To Ginger's point earlier about students being able to go perform a task and observe or teach within a space through Zoom, or even in person when we're there, or if you are there already, but then being able to engage directly with that teacher again to reflect and think through what happened. We see things being built into dual credit courses, helping run the preschool, like was mentioned. And we even see some stuff, I almost think about it in like a health science space where you have like a clinical rotation, where you actually have a student kind of doing mini kind of micro internships where they're going to different roles or departments, again, showing them the breadth of opportunity within education. And I see some pieces in the chat if there's any questions here. Awesome. I think some little shout outs about social media. And yeah, I think I am not quote unquote hip with the kids. I think all I do pretty much is like Instagram these days, which I don't think like high schoolers are even on anymore. I think I've like now moved into the category of like people who don't know, but that's fine. I still like Instagram. But however you can engage, I mean, that could even be like an internship project or a team-based challenge. Like, how do you have students figure out how to access and connect with students in a different way than we might kind of be boxed into thinking about, right? I just wanted to share here a couple of resources too from former collaborative and still current, I shouldn't say former, they're still with us, but Morrison High School, they've done a lot of really intentional work thinking about that career development experience type space and supporting those teachers who would be supporting students to complete that. So they have a placement teacher agreement that's linked here, a syllabus for their course. And then they've also taken, just an example here, they've taken those essential and technical education competencies and actually they met together as a team, actually joined them a couple of summers ago now, and they developed a rubric for what that looks like. So as they were observing that and assessing that, whether through performance of a task or an assessment, completion of a project, how they were looking for those competencies to be demonstrated. And then also provided a link here from Educators Rising. They have some different suggestions for what you can do to engage students in career exploration. And then also just some different tasks and activities that students could do if they were pursuing a teaching internship. Whew, all right. I would love, we do have some time. I would love to even get you all in groups for just maybe like 5 to 6 minutes and just share in your group some different wows and wonders, or if you have questions for each other that you want to share, thinking about if there were insights that you had today, more questions that you might have, or how you might already be thinking about things that you'd like to incorporate into your education pathway. Some next steps here, Juan Jose's going to launch a poll in just a moment here. Would love to get your all's feedback on today's session and how it was for you, but would love any other feedback in the chat. I definitely hear the piece there, Kayla, about dual credit courses and where we can work as a collaborative to kind of be thought partners through that and show examples of where others might have had those conversations and are implementing those courses that you might be having difficulty with. But if there's other resources or conversations that would be helpful, please put those in the chat. We are going to send out the recording and materials from today shortly. I'll also start to put together and gather some additional marketing materials and gather those resources from the first collaborative to share with you all. But mentioned it earlier, did want to put here the updated handbook for District 214. And they do just a really nice example of showing the different options within the education pathway and the different grade levels and spaces that you might go into. Doing some kind of organization and stuff on my end. If there's any requests in order to distribute those funds, I'll be following up with you all. Thank you for submitting all those materials. But really just again, a big thank you all for joining. We're so excited to continue this work with you all and together as a group, but would love, Juan Jose, if you can launch that poll and just get your feedback here before you head out. And again, any comments that you want to provide in the chat would be very helpful. The poll is anonymous, so. I do just want to show here really quick the different resources that are linked at the end of this presentation for you all that have been discussed today. But unless you have other questions or comments or anything you want to share with the group, once you complete the poll, you can get 5 minutes back of your day if you complete. But thank you all again, and reach out at any time. If there's any questions that you have as you reflect and go back on your teams and think through your pathways.